Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to a brand new edition of Fronteras. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Hector H. Lopez. One of our most interesting parts of the show is when we have our political roundtable. Tonight, we do have a political roundtable for all of you. As you know, it is presidential election season. A lot of big topics, and the topics run right through our very community. One of the big topics that has surfaced as one of the big hot issues is immigration. Immigration has been talked about in quite big fashion. Entire states have taken particular positions that are gaining the headlines. And so it's one of those times that we can have an opportunity to kind of take a look at it, analyze it, have a little bit of back and forth, and we have a great political roundtable. And we're going to try to continue to do this. Joining us this time around, we have Dr. Joseph Villescas from Villescas Research, Media, and Instruction. As you know, he is a regular here on Fronteras, commenting on all the various topics that we have had. He is a prominent political consultant in the area, as well as, involved in instruction and media, as well as significant research that is ongoing in our community and beyond. Also joining us on the political roundtable, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, we have Representative Ruben Gallego, who represents District 16 out in Arizona in the state legislature. Obviously, Arizona is a very big topic of conversation, to say the least, when it comes to the topic of immigration, not only at the national level, but at state levels and even at a local level. We're all talking about what is going on in Arizona. Representative Gallego is a personal good friend of mine. We go back to our days at Georgetown University, just like I go to Georgetown University. He went to Harvard, and we also had my good friend Joseph Villescas out at Wesleyan. Actually, Representative Gallego served in our Marine Corps. He served one full tour of duty in Iraq and then came back and was elected to his current position. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Ruben, it's great to see you. Joseph, you know, guys, immigration has been one of these topics that we just can't seem to get anywhere near some sort of jumping off point when it comes to actual action and maybe agreement, or we just can't get away from this topic. And it's been decades, you know. It seems like it's the hottest topic. And I mean, Ruben, you're experiencing it on a day-to-day over in Arizona. Tell me a little bit about what you found as you came into your position as a state legislature. And I mean, you guys are mentioned in the news every other minute.
That's too bad we can't put a tax on that so we can fill a deficit here. Look, immigration is an issue because it's a political issue. It's being used as a wedge issue. We're dealing with a changing demographic here in Arizona, and there were some politicians that saw an opportunity to basically take advantage of a lot of people's xenophobias, a lot of people that had no concept of what Arizona was, and when they moved to Arizona from whatever retirement community or into whatever retirement community they're from, they basically have been politically exploited by the Republican Party here in Arizona. And what happened is, for many years, it was politically advantageous to do that for the Republican Party. And as of late, it's starting to turn the tide. But it is political. And, I think the mistake that we made here in Arizona was that we assumed that it wasn't political. And that was a big mistake among our Latino leaders here.
We have a lot of big personalities that have taken the national stage from your state of Arizona, Ruben. We have national stage personalities on the topic of immigration, like Governor Jan Brewer, like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Some pretty big people that have kind of gotten turned into characters of sorts on the national media and really carry this banner. Now, Joseph, you research the phenomenon of immigration and where the Latino community currently stands within not only our country but beyond. What is what is your finding when it comes to the topic? I know you and I had a little bit of a conversation backstage before we came onto the show. That it's one of those topics that baffle.
I think the xenophobia did galvanize a lot of voters in a time where it was useful politically. I think the foundation for the leadership that McCain provided to the state also was reinforced by some utilization of immigrants, like we've done historically in politics forever, making the Mexicans the problem of the economy or of the quality of life there. You have to remember there was a massive housing boom at the end of the 20th century in that state, and yeah, a lot of newcomers came to town, and ultimately there was a local population, proximity to the border, that really did feel that these people were sapping us of our services, enough so to get armed, mobilize, and guard the border themselves to prevent the onslaught.
Talking about the Minutemen.
Yeah. You begin to look at the state and you think about it. There was really not just xenophobia, but hatred. And to this day, many of us as onlookers cannot believe the state in which we have a sheriff, utilizing a stance, a very hard stance on enforcing their interpretation of the law and positioning Mexican nationals and others in extreme conditions.
Yeah, you also have to remember this, and I know people try to put this on the issue of the recession. This started with the recession. This anti-immigrant sentiment was pre-recession. Actually, it was even during the boom times here in Arizona that you saw a lot of ballot propositions that were being passed, and you saw Sheriff Joe Arpaio doing a lot of his extrajudicial immigration enforcement. So this has nothing really to do with the recession. It has to really do with a growing population trying to assert itself versus a population that's still trying to keep some semblance of control or what they thought they had control. So this is this is something entirely new. And you got to remember, Sheriff Joe Arpaio is a politician through and through. Back in the day, in the early 2005, he used to receive awards from the Mexican consulate for his fair and just treatment of immigrants here in Mexico. But as soon as the political winds changed, he also changed, and that's why he's been taking advantage of this situation and really using it to distract from a lot of the problems that he has. Whenever there's a problem with the fact that he's misspent about $100 million, he just goes and tries to round up more brown people. If somebody dies in his jail, he calls for another immigration roundup. This is one of the most corrupt politicians in the country, mind you. But he uses immigration as a way, immigration enforcement as a way to basically disguise his corruption.
And this is the thing that gets me, gentlemen. And you know what? Around the table, we have a good group of friends. But beyond that, we are members of the Latino community, well educated, and we see this coming. We see this occurring within our own communities, whether it's in Arizona or in certain respects, this topic monopolizing our national airwaves, whether in Pennsylvania or even here in El Paso. We have a lot of those conversations. The thing that gets me, though, gentlemen, is that we have really only one concrete policy being discussed that has gotten a little bit of legs, which is maybe the DREAM Act, and it's been not passed, which that should say a lot. So we have that. The fact that we want to give an opportunity to our children that arrived in this nation by no fault of their own, that have known no other country than this one, that to be able to contribute to America. It kind of baffles me, though, that's when you get into like the depth of the issue, that's it. There's no more concrete policy that has been developed that has been entertained at high levels. You have actions being taken by an entire state that is considered to be constitutional by some and non-constitutional by others. But one of the big questions that you brought up backstage, Joseph, to what end? I mean, what is the Latino agenda in Arizona? I mean, beyond a replacement of a Joe Arpaio or something like that.
If we were to replace him, who would we replace him with? What would be the change in policies? How would you offset racial profiling in Arizona? How would you satiate the xenophobia of these voters? How would you bring in a whole new body of voters to sustain whatever new policy pushes that would be put in place? I think right now, when we talk about immigration, we usually talk about some type of concept of the president passing some type of immigration reform, but we don't go into substantively what should that reform look like and how should it be implemented and how does this impact border security and so on.
By the way, it's not just border security. You got to understand, at the same time that they were cutting, they were enhancing these immigration reforms in Arizona, they were also at the same time doing massive cuts to education. They were also doing massive cuts to the social safety net of Arizona. And here's why. The Republican leadership here in this state, instead of arguing, on a philosophical level whether or not we should fund public schools, their argument many times is, our public schools are well funded in Arizona. If it wasn't for all those illegals in the schools, there'd be enough money. So you got to understand, this is not just, it has to do with immigration, it has to do with basically what the future of Arizona looks like. The end goal for your Arizona Latino is to be able to live the American dream. Send their kids to good schools so the kids can get well-trained and or go to college and get good professional careers, just like anybody else. Unfortunately, you have a fairly dominant political entity here that really wants to just, take up the ladder that they use to climb up to the American middle class. So, our end goal here is to replace our pile with somebody who, is for law enforcement, professional law enforcement, but two, also to just start implementing a lot of the changes that we need in Arizona for our families, our Latino families to succeed. The average age of Latino population in Arizona is 24. We're the ones having kids. So it's important that we protect education, we protect healthcare, we keep building roads because we're the ones, our families are the ones that are going to use it. And we're the ones that basically have to create this state into a brand new state and push the economy along because the retirement community is not going to be doing that, though they are politically dominant here.
But if the average age of this population is 24, then there's a very low propensity that this population votes. And although
Absolutely.
These issues are of their
why
concern,
it takes a lot of work. And one of the things that we've done here in Arizona is where we can take our wins, we take our wins. And so last year we increased Latino turnout and elected our second Latino city council member here in the city of Phoenix. We increased Latino turnout in the city council by 200%. We helped out with the recall of the actual author of SB 1070. So it's not like we're neutered here. We're actually fighting back, and we're fighting back in an effective manner. But our time is not here yet. But whatever we can do, we're doing. And we're also at the same time creating new leadership. Part of the reason we're in this situation is because our Latino leaders, our older Latino leaders, were basically useless and had not developed a bench and had not developed any kind of political power. And we found ourselves in a situation where when we finally were really being attacked, that they were nowhere to be found and basically were abandoning the whole community altogether. And that's why you see a whole young crop of Latino leaders coming in, because we have to push out a lot of these people that have been still for so long. So it's a whole process that we're actually going through right now. It's quite fascinating if you're on the ground floor here.
So it sounds like to me we have some building blocks out here of what an agenda should look like. Perhaps an agenda should revolve around the development of future leaders, because I think, Representative Gallego, you mentioned the outlook or the perspective people have on some of your older Latino elected officials out in Arizona. I got to tell you, it's not much different in our own community here in El Paso. I mean, we've had headlines that call our former state representative that was out in the same district that Representative Mary Gonzalez is now going to be representing. They used to call him furniture, but that was an actual headline that was in our news. So it sounds like there is the beginnings, the building blocks of an agenda. But again, when you get in depth to the scenario of if we win, then what?
Right.
It seems like our agenda is still in development and perhaps a bit shallow, wouldn't you say?
Well, at least when it comes to articulating an agenda, a national U.S. Latino population's
well, that's what I'm
agenda,
talking about.
That immigration reform is positioned as the primary issue of contention for this population is relatively artificial and inflated. But it is key to people along the border and border states, definitely. But nationally, we have the subdivides that did not rank this as the top issue, yet that is what is considered our galvanizing community issue. So
what are some of these other issues that characters like Joe Arpaio or a Governor Jan Brewer or others that are on the scene monopolizing the airwaves and driving it as one of the big centerpieces? What are some of these other issues, gentlemen?
The issues excuse me.
Ruben, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm maybe a little confused. What are these other issues that they're afraid of that the Latino community is trying to push?
That works.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I'm saying is, what are some of these other issues that are predominant within the Latino community that are sometimes being overshadowed by immigration being such a big issue on the national stage?
Okay, well, I mean, again, like the needs of the Latino community are an age-old need that has been existent, whether it was the Italian immigrant, the Jewish immigrant, the Irish immigrant, or just your basic, middle-class working person. We need good schools to educate and train our kids for the future. We need access to economic markets so we can start our businesses. We need, we need a safe environment so our kids can grow safely and not have the huge asthma rates that they have right now. We need infrastructure to help us, grow with the country, and it's just everything else. The basic that every other community has had, every other ethnicity has had as immigrants to this country, we need also, and that's what makes this country great. Unfortunately, what's happening right now with austerity measures is that those kinds of programs are being cut away, and they negatively impact us the most because we're still a growing part of this country. So my opinion is the Latino, agenda is your basic middle class agenda, and we are affected by any cuts and any harm that comes to the middle class agenda.
I think I would concur. That we have pretty standard American populations derived from immigrant streams. We have the same issues. They change generationally, perhaps, but at least along the border, we have the shared responsibility of articulating what exactly is happening here and how we need to better transform our laws to serve the students, the families, and the people that do not mean us harm. I mean, this is the thing, that ultimately what you have in Arizona is the restriction of rights on, many cases, racially profiled citizens that are aiming to contribute to benefit the fabric of society. The implementation of these laws and policies and of some of these leaders are ultimately to gain headlines, to be scandalous, to provide that type of attention, but they're not looking to benefit society.
And sometimes we fall into this situation where we are discussing the issue of immigration for more than a decade, and years on end without any action actually succeeding. Because we will have some legislation proposed, it'll be turned down, or it'll remain in committee, or whatever ends up happening politically. But then again, where should we begin? What are our next steps, I guess, is the question. If we've been at this for 10 years or more in many of our communities where immigration has been villainized and utilized in such a way to even overshadow some other issues that are ongoing, like both of you point out, then what's our starting point?
I think now,
and what does a future plan look like?
I think the way in which immigration reform is mainly described is related to human rights abuses along the border in particular. This translates to both Latino populations and Asian populations as well. But taking it to the next level, what I saw, interestingly enough, coming out of the organized professional business sectors of El Paso was immigration reform for altering how our visas function and how we can fast-track particular citizens who can grow businesses within our country. So I see a sector of American voters being interested in immigration reform to grow our economy and grow opportunities with these emerging populations that are most likely to grow businesses. But I do not see the same traction happening on the human rights issue because it's countered by extremists who really do want to punish these people for breaking law.
I think the thing that we need to start is to actually get political empowerment. And just because we get a couple of stories in Time magazine saying how we're winning the battle and maybe we get one or two people elected doesn't mean we necessarily have political empowerment. Until the Latino community has true political power, we're not going to be able to pass some of these issues that do matter to us. And while immigration is not the top issue that matters to Latinos when you speak to them, it is kind of a litmus test of what you feel about our community. And I think we as a community do need to fix the immigration question so that way we can move on to the bigger questions we have to deal with about how we're going to proceed in this country and how we're going to make this country better. But I think we made the mistake many years ago that by getting some people elected, that would give us political power, and that has proven not to be true. One, because our leadership has been so weak, but two, because political power is not just found in the halls of Congress; it's also found in the halls of the CEO boards and of the union shops, and that's where we haven't also been populating at the same time, and that's where we have to start moving into, so making sure that for every congressman we get in there, we also need to find 5 or 6 Latino or Latina CEOs.
In our last occasion here on Fronteras, which can be found online on our website. We had a discussion about the collaboration of nonprofits and utilizing nonprofits to become that leadership that you're talking about, Representative, in the respect of having leadership come from other areas, from the business world, the CEO boards that you're talking to, the CEO and the boards that you're talking about, the nonprofit sector and the like. If we were to say, we would like to come up with a few key points that our communities, whether they be in Arizona or they be here in the El Paso Las Cruces corridor, that our communities need to begin to focus on so we can actually begin to affect an agenda that leads to a better tomorrow for all communities involved, what would your points of recommendation be? I mean, I know that you guys are organizing yourselves out there, Representative, in Arizona. You've had conversations with me about some of those efforts. Joseph, you talk about bringing a stronger support from younger generations and nonprofits. How do we bring a proposal, if you will, to our communities? And what should that proposal be?
I agree with the political empowerment goal, but ultimately I feel that we have to promote civic participation in general to achieve that goal. Civic participation post-World War II era in education, that used to be kind of the foundation of the educational platform, that's disappeared. I think the nonprofit sector has to promote that civic participation, involvement, awareness, collaboration directly impacting community issues. These don't have to be politicized, but they do require communities to get organized around the issues that are impacting them most, while simultaneously recognizing the resources they have to address them. That is the ability, or that's fertile ground to grow a new leadership base, to infuse within our state and federal elected positions. But that will take some time and it will take some investment. I do think it takes that collaboration and that vision of newly elected younger leaders who recognize that it will take across-the-board collaboration among these fields are usually kept apart, but across this entire region. I feel that the situation in Arizona will require greater partnerships from New Mexico, Texas, and California to really articulate change for the entire region. How Arizona goes will influence how we all will go. 24 counties share the same border. Representative, you agree?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree, and I think to take it up a step further, one of the things that we really are investing here in Arizona is professional development, and especially our nonprofit charities. One of them here we have what's called the Hispanic Leadership Institute, where we take identify Hispanic leaders and we take them through a 3-month training program, and we get them networked into the community to be able to serve on boards, commissions, both on the nonprofit and for-profit level, and at the civic level too. Out of this organization, we've already produced a couple of city council members, a couple of school board members, a couple of state reps. And even those people that have come out of this organization, they've gone on and also recruited other candidates to run for other offices. So it's been a very good effect. But too, in terms of civic engagement, we have found that it has been very helpful. One of the largest reasons why we had such higher turnout in the city council election last time around is because for the first time ever, we, and then I say we, that means us young Latinos, particularly with an emphasis on the DREAM Act, with DREAM Act students largely leading the charge, we went door to door and spoke to Latinos and asked them, were they happy with their city government? Were they happy with their local park? Were they happy with what was going on with crime? And a lot of times they said no, and that's when we explained to them how they could have control of their future by actually voting in a city council election. And that's how we surprised and shocked the world when we, basically for the first time ever elected a Latino in an area that had been traditionally Anglo-Republican. We ended up electing a Latino Democrat, and someone who was horribly outspent too by the corporate entities. So there's a lot of elements to this that we're working on, but you have to have civic engagement, and you also have to have leadership development at the same time, because if you have civic engagement, but you have no one on the leadership side to basically guide them and push them in a direction, you'll have a rudderless ship. And also at the same time, you have a leader, but you have no followers, and you also have a leader with no power. So we're trying to use both tracks here in Arizona.
It's interesting that we boiled down to a few key things that have been repeated not just by both of our guests on this roundtable, but many other guests as well along the course of the last season. One, political empowerment seems to be a very big thing that needs to be achieved, but can't be something that is done in a vacuum. Otherwise, it leads to nowhere, the way you guys phrased it, the way you guys put it.
Political empowerment has to go beyond the election, has to
Yeah,
go beyond
absolutely.
the campaign. And that's when I see new leaders emerge that develop that infrastructure and then put it on the shelf and wait a year or two or however long until their next cycle comes up. It's such a shame.
Right.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Organizing for America 4 years ago. We developed these systems, but let's take them to the next level. And let's push those ideas and those concerns in the community on a dialogue that continues throughout the term in office.
So to do that, then we do civic engagement, civic development, and then Representative Gallego was talking about also leadership development within our communities, and you echoed that sentiment, Joseph. So it seems that we have a jumping off point, all of which incidentally has a very big prerequisite, and that's education. It seems like that would be the entry level.
But you have an argument to be making to a conservative Republican that investment in this predominantly Latino education system will pay off in the long run. The more the resources are, the more prepared they are, the more exposed they are, the more languages they speak, the greater Arizona's economy will prosper.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, they are the future for the growth of that state. To treat them like villains or a pestilence, that is plaguing them. That is the wrong political philosophy right now. To embrace them means to embrace the future that is coming for all the borderlands.
It's not just the future, it is now.
Absolutely.
Right now, 48% of everyone age of 18 in Arizona is Hispanic. Our biggest trading partner in Arizona is Mexico. We trade more with Mexico than some of our border states. So there is a big problem right now that we are not getting as much of economic benefit from Mexico as we can, because there's a lot of Mexican businesses that don't want to do business.
Representative, that's going to have to be our last word. I hope I can invite you to come to our studio next time around. I hear you're going to be in the El Paso, Las Cruces area soon. So Dr. Joseph Villescas, Representative Ruben Gallego, thank you very much for being with us here at Fronteras, folks. An engaging subject that we will continue to explore. Have a great evening. I'm Hector H.
Thank you, Hector. Bye, Doctor.